Hollywood would never forget Olivia de Havilland when she stepped foot in a courtroom in 1943. Her co-stars labeled her traitor behind her back. To anyone who would listen, the studio bosses spread lies about her. Her job search lasted nearly 2 years. She lost nearly all of her friends as a result of her position against Warner Brothers. This is the true account of how the most beloved woman in America became the most reviled figure in Hollywood. Tokyo, Japan was the site of Olivia de Havilland's birth on July 1, 1916. Walter Augustus de Havilland and Lillian Augusta Rouse were both British. Her mother was an actress, while her father was a professor and patent attorney. Joan Fontaine, Olivia's sister, was born a year after her. While the world was still reeling from the effects of World War I, their family lived in Tokyo's International District. However, everything changed for them in 1919. Lillian brought her 2 girls to California after making the tough decision to leave Walter when she found out he was unfaithful. Walter never left Japan and kept his distance from them throughout their lives. At first, they settled in San Francisco, but Lillian later moved the family to Saratoga, a quiet town south of the city. She thought her daughter's health would improve in the warmer climate. The loss of their father had a profound impact on Olivia and Joan's formative years. Olivia demonstrated unwavering resolve even in his absence. She loved reading and storytelling, small hints of the career that would one day define her. Their surname name, de Havilland, derives from their family's roots in Guernsey, a tiny island in the English Channel. As she made her way in the United States, Olivia's British ancestry helped her feel more at home. In 1924, when Olivia was 8 years old, Lillian remarried. Her new husband, George Milan Fontaine, was harsh and believed in discipline. He created tight standards and rarely displayed warmth. Olivia and Joan were not permitted to take part in extracurricular activities. Fontaine demanded perfect obedience. And when Olivia began starring in school plays, the tension in the house got worse. He ultimately offered her an ultimatum. She had the option to permanently leave home or stop performing. A life-altering decision was made by Olivia when she was only 16 years old. For the sake of her acting career, she ran away from home. At Los Gatos High School, she was a stage performer who developed her passion for plays like The Merchant of Venice and Alice in Wonderland. She persisted in pursuing her gift despite her stepfather's attempts to discourage her. Something out of the ordinary occurred in 1933. The famous theatrical director Max Reinhardt was directing a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream at the Hollywood Bowl. As an understudy for Hermia, Olivia was cast in the role. She was just 18, and it felt like a little step ahead. The main actress and original understudy both left the show right before the debut, though. Olivia was handed the part at the last minute, but the moment she took the stage, the whole show turned around. She gave a performance that the crowd adored. Even more crucially, Reinhardt recognized her abilities. Reinhardt pushed for Olivia's inclusion in the Midsummer Night's Dream picture that Warner Brothers was developing. The studio was in agreement, and in 1934 she signed a 7-year deal with a weekly salary of $200. That was a significant amount for a young person just starting out. It was Olivia's breakthrough role in the 1935 picture. She co-starred with 2 established Hollywood heavyweights, James Cagney and Dick Howell. To be sure, Olivia wasn't your average newbie. She had an effortless charm and delivered a remarkable performance. It marked the start of a far larger undertaking. Her debut came in Captain Blood, 1935, a brave attempt by Warner Brothers amid the Great Depression. The studio placed de Havilland and Flynn, 2 unproven performers, in leading parts, taking a risk. Her character was Arabella Bishop. Alongside Flynn's Peter Blood, an Irish doctor who becomes a pirate, is the lively niece of a Jamaican plantation owner. The months of August through October 1935 were used for filming. The film received 4 nominations for Academy Awards, including Best Picture, after its successful December 28 debut. It also exposed de Havilland's charm and grace to viewers, making her a budding star. Her chemistry with Flynn was evident. They became one of Hollywood's most adored on-screen duos, starring in 8 films together. The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, a Technicolor extravaganza shot between September 1937 and January 1938, was their subsequent blockbuster. It would have been easy for de Havilland to play any number of damsels in distress in her role as Maid Marian. On the contrary, she inspired Marian to be courageous and bright. prepared to lay down his life for the sake of Robin Hood and his merry comrades. The picture received a Best Picture nomination after its May 14, 1938 debut, and subsequent instant classic status. Although she was successful, de Havilland still felt confined. She played the part of the refined heroine who stood by the side of a brave hero time and time again. Even though she was appreciated by fans in these flicks, she yearned for more. She yearned for multifaceted protagonists and antagonists who actually advanced the plot. With 1939's Gone with the Wind, the opportunity finally presented itself. David O. Selznick, a producer, was able to borrow her from Warner Brothers so she could portray Melanie Hamilton. This was quite different from her typical roles. Melanie may not have been an adrenaline junkie or a Hollywood star, but her unassuming power made her unforgettable. With director Victor Fleming at the helm, filming got underway in January 1939. Following the replacement of George Cukor, Clark Gable played Rhett Butler, and de Havilland co-starred with Vivien Leigh as Scarlett O'Hara. Although Leigh's performance was the film's driving force, spectators connected with Melanie on a deeper level because of de Havilland's performance. She made Melanie into so much more than simply Scarlett's kind friend by bringing her own warmth and strength to the part. At Atlanta's Loew's Grand Theatre, the picture had its world debut on December 15, 1939. Among the all-time top-grossing films, it achieved legendary status. The Best Supporting Actress nomination was de Havilland's first at the Oscars. Her co-star, the first African-American to receive an Academy Award, Hattie McDaniel, was presented with the honor. Nonetheless, de Havilland's nomination demonstrated that she was more than just your average love interest. A turning point came with Melanie. The part called for nuance and profound feeling. Instead of merely beauty and elegance, it revealed to Havilland her abilities and the gaps in her professional journey. Acting as the innocent heroine in movies about guys was no longer something she was interested in. She preferred challenging, multifaceted characters. However, change did not interest Warner Brothers. She had had enough of being offered the same sorts of parts over and over again. She would need to stand up for herself if she desired a change. When Olivia de Havilland sued Warner Brothers in 1943, it transformed Hollywood for life. There was a lot of lack of agency for performers in that era. The studios cast them in potential parts and signed them to long-term contracts. Since 1936, de Havilland has been associated with Warner Brothers. Even though her first contract was only meant to last for a year, the studio continued extending it. They utilized a provision known as suspension if she declined a part or became ill. They were able to put a hold on her contract, ensuring that she would never have complete freedom. She had already spent 7 years when Warner Brothers asserted that she owed them time in 1943. She made the decision to resist. The studio was sued by de Havilland on August 23, 1943. Section 2855 of the California Labor Code, which stated that no contract for personal services may be longer than 7 years, was the basis of her complaint. Her point was quite clear: suspensions shouldn't lengthen that restriction. A precedent-setting ruling in her favor may shake up the whole sector. Over a year passed during the conflict. In an effort to thwart her, Warner Brothers exhausted all possible avenues. They attempted to derail her career by blacklisting her and sending letters to other studios advising them not to hire her. Yet de Havilland would have none of it. The California Court of Appeal granted her request on December 8, 1944. The court ruled that 7 years was to be understood as 7 calendar years rather than 7 years of continuous employment without breaks. The de Havilland Law was the name given to this decision. It ended the studio's practice of locking performers into endless contracts. There was a price to pay for winning the lawsuit. Legal expenses cost de Havilland $13,000, or almost $230,000 in today's money. She, too, had been unemployed for over 2 years. Many thought that was the end of her career. After that, in 1946, she disproved all of their assumptions. After signing with Paramount Pictures, she stepped into a leading role. She was named Best Actress at the Oscars for her strong performance. She went from being on the blacklist to winning an Oscar with the help of a single film. The Heiress, a picture that showcased her versatility as an actor, earned her another Oscar 3 years later. During that time, she was a leading lady in The Snake Pit, an early Hollywood picture that dealt with mental illness. This part cemented her status as one of the finest actors of her day and garnered her yet another Oscar nomination. For many performers ensnared in unjust contracts, de Havilland became a hero because of her struggle. Hollywood owes Olivia a huge debt, even Joan Fontaine, her sister, acknowledged, but not everyone was on board with her. She was considered a problem by the studio management. The man who had attempted to destroy her career, Jack Warner, never forgave her and branded her spoilt. To avoid upsetting the studios, a few performers kept their distance from her. She had altered Hollywood's course, though. An iconic Hollywood film pairing included the legendary Olivia de Havilland and the legendary Errol Flynn. 8 of their films were released together between 1935 and 1941. Their on-screen connection was so intense that many assumed their romance was genuine. The captivating Australian actor Flynn was immediately captivated by de Havilland upon their 1935 meeting at Warner Brothers. Nervous and charming, he was 26 years old. Elegant and welcoming, she was 19 years old. Their breakout feature, Captain Blood, established their talent. They became legendary 3 years later because to Robin Hood's exploits. Their tumultuous connection existed off-screen as well. Since Flynn was married to actress Lily Demeta, de Havilland chose not to act on her feelings for him, although she did confess they existed. His love, however, was easy for him to confess. In 1937, during a huge gala commemorating King George VI's coronation, Flynn expressed his desire to be by her side. She told him he needed to fix his marriage before she would accept him. Never did he. His book, written years later, revealed his profound affection for her. De Havilland was taken aback and moved by what she read. She said that she had never considered their bond inconsequential, even after he passed away in 1959. The enthralling quality of their films was enhanced by their implicit affection. They were respectful to one another at first. Things nonetheless started to heat up as time went on. De Havilland became tired of playing the same role in all of Vince Flynn's action flicks. Warner Brothers continually partnering her with less demanding jobs, despite her desire for more challenging ones. She battled for greater possibilities, which caused friction with the studio and even Flynn on occasion. Things were made worse by Flynn's actions. He had a reputation for getting drunk, throwing parties, and pulling pranks, including ones on de Havilland. He staged an incident in 1940 on the Santa Fe Trail when his face was in the spotlight and she could only see the back of her head. Because she was seeing Jimmy Stewart at the time, she thought he was envious and did it to get even. When they shot 1941's They Died with Their Boots On, tensions were at an all-time high. Upon his personal request, de Havilland reconsidered her refusal to collaborate with him. Their final scene together was quite touching, even if it was strained. Famous for his charisma and common sense, Flynn gazed into de Havilland's eyes as General Custer and remarked. After he escorted her to the 1939 premiere of Gone with the Wind, their romance became a hot subject in gossip columns. They were supposed to elope, but she turned down his proposal in the 1930s or 1940s, despite everyone's expectations. No, she didn't think he was really prepared to settle down. The public was unaware that de Havilland had secretly fallen for another man. She met director John Huston in 1941 while they were filming In This Our Life. Stewart had no relation to him. He was known to be a womanizer in addition to having a bright intellect and a rebellious personality. He has a wife as well. Their affair continued to develop despite that. They had a profound bond due to their common appreciation of literature and art, and de Havilland appreciated his intelligence and wit. However, they were far from steady in their relationship. Huston has a troubled love past and an unruly personal life. More than only her private life was impacted by her choice to decline Stewart. The part of Mary Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life was offered to her in 1946, but she turned it down. It was too awkward to consider collaborating with Stewart so soon after their breakup. De Havilland won her first Oscar that year for To Each His Own, while Stewart was nominated for an Oscar that year for the same picture. Her romantic life remained a topic of public interest. Marcus Goodrich, whose novel Delilah made him famous, was her husband when she wed in 1946. Before long, fissures started to appear. She learned about his 4 marriages before to hers through the tabloids. There was a lot of mental and physical violence in the marriage, and it became poisonous. Most alarming was the time Goodrich, in a fit of rage, tossed a dish of beefsteak pie across the room, claiming he should have had steak and kidney pie instead. His unpredictability caused her to bear his tantrums for a long time. To ensure her own safety and that of their little son, Benjamin, she filed a divorce in 1953 after consulting with her priest. There was hope for her second marriage. She tied the knot with French writer and Paris match editor Pierre Galanti in 1955. She settled in Paris and penned Every Frenchman Has One, a book that playfully detailed her adventures assimilating into French society. They looked to be happily together for a while after having a daughter, Giselle. They did, however, divorce in 1962. They waited 17 years to formally dissolve their marriage before divorcing, ultimately doing so in 1979. Their friendship continued long after their sexual involvement ended. De Havilland took care of Galanti when he got sick and continued to do so until his death in 1998. Olivia de Havilland took a risk in 1955. Following her marriage to Pierre Galanti, a French writer and executive editor at Paris Match, she uprooted her life at the age of 39 and relocated to Paris. A three-story mansion close to the Bois de Boulogne provided them with a peaceful escape from the hectic world of Hollywood, so they made it their home. This change was not just an individual decision. Her career took a significant change at that moment. She stopped accepting every part that came her way and started picking and choosing the ones that fit her developing creative vision. During this time, 1964 was the year of one of her most iconic roles. Robert Aldrich's psychological thriller Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte included her. Even before she was cast in the picture, it was garnering a lot of attention. Originally set to star alongside Bette Davis as Miriam, Joan Crawford had to withdraw from the project due to sickness and behind-the-scenes drama. A character rife with tension and treachery was taken over by the stunning de Havilland, who brought an air of subtle danger and grace to the part. With 7 nominations, the picture was a smashing hit. The show followed Davis's character, Charlotte Hollis, as she dealt with the aftereffects of her lover's death many years before. Shocking truths of greed and deceit were set in motion by the sinister turns performed by de Havilland's character. A turning point in her career came with this performance. She was famous for her roles as heroic heroines and love leads. Now, though, her brilliance was on full display in the more nuanced parts she was playing. There was more to life in Paris than performing. She immersed herself in European life, learning French and going to the Cannes Film Festival and other big events. The fast-paced world of Hollywood had no hold on her anymore. She took charge of her career instead, playing parts that genuinely piqued her attention. The cinema business began to favor younger women in the 1970s. But de Havilland was unwilling to give up. She sought new opportunities to display her ability by moving into television and the theater. Her 1986 film Anastasia featured her as Maria Fyodorovna, Dowager Empress. Her most famous role was in the critically acclaimed miniseries The Mystery of Anna. Hollywood had stopped casting women her age in historical and dramatic parts, but television afforded her the opportunity to do just that. Her stage career, which she had previously explored, included roles in Romeo and Juliet and Candida, both of which she had done on Broadway in the 1950s, demonstrating that her talents extended beyond the realm of cinema. Now, in her latter years of performing, she found that theatrical work gave her a chance to interact with people on a more personal level. She made more than simply a career choice when she began focusing on theater and television. More time for her family was another benefit. She had 2 children from her marriages, Benjamin Goodrich from her first marriage and Giselle Galanti from her second, and she found stability in Paris while raising them. She achieved professional and personal success at a time when many of her contemporaries were unable to do so. Her impact never faded, even when she left the performing profession in the late 80s. She was bestowed with a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2017, when she was 101 years old. The oldest person to ever get the title of Commander of the Order of the British Empire was her dame, whom Queen Elizabeth II bestowed upon her. It arrived only days before her 101st birthday, and she deemed it the most satisfying of birthday presents. She was unable to attend the event in London due to her advanced age, therefore the award was given to her at the British Embassy in Paris. Many more accolades came her way during the years. In recognition of her significant cultural impact on the United States, she was presented with the National Medal of Arts by President George W. Bush in 2008. Recognizing her influence in film and in France, President Nicolas Sarkozy bestowed the Legion of Honor upon her in 2010. These accolades were a fitting tribute to her many accomplishments as a cultural icon and an actor throughout her life. Even though they were both extremely gifted performers, Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine's relationship was tainted with animosity from the beginning. Being born within a year of each other meant they were very similar. During Hollywood's golden period, they both became stars, received critical praise, and won Oscars. These shared traits drove a wedge between them rather than a bridge. They were bitter rivals for almost 100 years. This turned into a notorious quarrel in the history of Hollywood. Childhood was the beginning of their problems. Their mother seemed to prefer Olivia, Joan always thought. The sense of perpetual inferiority that she had only intensified with the passage of time festered within her. There was a lot of fighting between the sisters. During one particularly violent confrontation beside a pool, Olivia allegedly shattered Joan's clavicle and ripped up her hand-me-down clothing. It was already a bad situation when Joan wanted to be an actor, but her mother wanted her to alter her name. Using the de Havilland surname may set her apart from Olivia, thus she refrained from doing so. In the end, Joan followed in her stepfather's footsteps and took the surname Fontaine. However, she began to feel like an outsider as a result of the transformation. Their rivalry became more prominent as they were older. When they vied for the Best Actress Oscar in 1942, they made history as the first siblings to ever do so. Hold Back the Dawn was Olivia's nomination, and Suspicion was Joan's. Despite Joan's victory, the sisterly bond was further strained, rather than strengthened. Despite Olivia's best efforts, Joan paid her no mind as she rose to claim the trophy. Disgraced was Olivia. Olivia exacted her vengeance 5 years later, when she received her first Academy Award for To Each His First. Despite Joan's best efforts, Olivia brushed by her as she extended her hand to shake. There were fleeting efforts at reconciliation over the decades that their enmity raged on. They made appearances together at a few of Hollywood gatherings in the 60s, but their relationship never fully recovered. "I would first won the Oscar before Olivia did," Joan said in her memoirs, reflecting on their competition. "I can almost guarantee that she will be furious if I pass away before her." After Joan's death in 2013 at the age of 96, Olivia, who was 97 years old at the time, made a brief statement to convey her sorrow. Claiming she had never instigated the animosity, she made her case. The death of their mother in 1975 was a particularly devastating turning point in their animosity. During Joan's trip, Olivia was in charge of making funeral preparations. Everything, including the cremation of their mother, had already been determined by the time Joan learned of it. Anger consumed Joan. Olivia, she said, never informed her of their mother's death. A third person had to break the news to her. During the funeral, the sisters maintained a hushed silence. Following that, their relationship deteriorated worse. Feeling deceived, Joan eventually found out that her daughters had surreptitiously maintained communication with Olivia. Even with her own children, she kept her distance. Olivia, in contrast, maintained her innocence and said she had acted out of love even if she acknowledged becoming defensive occasionally. The animosity between them went beyond a purely interpersonal level. Even when they left the company, it lingered. They worked tirelessly to establish their reputations and didn't depend on family ties for their success. However, they frequently vied for acting opportunities, and their rivalry eventually spread to their private lives as well. Brian Ahern, an actor who had dated Olivia before, became Joan's husband. A lot of people took it as an attempt to irritate Olivia. Due to her role in Feud, Bet, and Joan, Olivia de Havilland took legal action in 2017 by suing FX Networks and Ryan Murphy Productions. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford's storied feud was the center of the series. Actress Catherine Zeta-Jones performed the role of the 101-year-old de Havilland. She was widely recognized as one of the most respectable actors in Hollywood. Unfortunately, she played the role of a gossip queen who trash-talked other celebrities on the show. Joan Fontaine, her sister, was referred to as a bitch in one scene, a term she never used. The fact that she had referred to her as a dragon lady was, in her opinion, entirely different. In her case, she claimed that FX had used her image and name without her consent. She insisted that there were fabricated parts in the show, such as an interview that didn't happen at the 1978 Oscars. She had spent several years dodging rumors about Hollywood A-listers. And now she was being portrayed in an unflattering light on television. Her attorneys expressed concern that other prominent persons may be harmed by approving this type of representation. When the case made it to the California Court of Appeal in 2018, it became a nationwide sensation. Judgment went in FX's favor since the judges cited the First Amendment as justification for the ruling. In their view, the program was more of a creative work that acted out historical events than a literal account of them. The court ruled that famous people had no say over the media's portrayal of them. This decision established a significant precedent in the law, establishing that filmmakers are free to use their imaginations while depicting real-life stories. The defeat was catastrophic for de Havilland. Her legal battle came to a close in March 2018 when the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case. Legal expenses for FX were also ordered to be paid by her. Opinions on the verdict were mixed. Some thought it protected artists' rights, while others worried that it may lead to inaccurate depictions of famous people. It was a major letdown for de Havilland. The decision, in her view, put other prominent figures in harm's way and disregarded her rights. Sleeping it off at her Parisian home on July 26, 2020, was Olivia de Havilland. At 104 years old, she passed away from natural causes, bringing an end to an era. People from all across the globe sent their condolences. She was hailed as an unparalleled talent by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Jared Leto, who plays her, said she was an inspiration who helped countless others. It was more than just the loss of a legendary actress when she passed away. History was made at that same time. Even though she was no longer a member of Hollywood's golden age, Olivia de Havilland was always more than a movie star. A trailblazer, an innovator, and a fierce competitor, she changed the face of the business like no one had before. Her films, her triumphs in the courtroom, and her unyielding determination continue to motivate and inspire people all around the world.